All right, we are back with our coverage of the No Kings protests, where thousands are still out across the country protesting Trump's handling of the economy, his immigration policies, and the war in Iran, just to name a few of the issues of concern. Hands Off, the organizer of the New York No Kings rally, say at least 350,000 people showed up to its event here. And just to be clear, Americans are not just organizing around policy concerns, but also a broader idea that power in this country is supposed to be checked, not crowned. Andrea Flores and George Conway are back with us. The response from this administration for these protests has been to either ignore it or to make fun of it. They love their memes and they love their social media trolling. And it seems that they dismiss it at every turn. And how, as somebody who was out there today and as somebody who has watched this administration's cruelty, both online and in real life, how do you think that negligence by their part to not listen to these citizens and their concerns will go down?
I mean, it's going down in their approval ratings, right? So you see Trump's approval rating at an historic low, and then you see Republicans starting to sink down with him. But, you know, I think there's actually a different issue. They are responding to protesters, just not these big organized ones, and they're trying to prosecute them, and they're doing a very serious attack on the First Amendment. And I think what was so interesting today is how many people weren't scared by that, because they are prosecuting a big church protest that happened in Minneapolis. Right. They're trying to prosecute anti-immigrant immigration enforcement protesters in a big raid in California. They're going after nonprofits. And so it's like their strategy is a quieter day by day, going after the First Amendment. And then, but I just love seeing so many Americans who may not know that's happening yet still not be scared to show up, right? It's showing me that their intimidation campaign isn't keeping people home yet. And I just think that's an important point, because he's going after just every amendment, it feels like, by the book, especially the right to protest. And so I think they're very strategic about what they choose to respond to. But politically, the popularity of the president is obviously low, but will that matter and sustain until the midterms is my question.
So, George, Eamon asked about how the administration is responding to these protests. I'm curious what you think is going through the heads of Republican politicians who are not Donald Trump when they see these crowds out here. Because basically the crowds, to the extent that they have an ask, it is to rein in the authoritarian impulses of this president, and Democrats are in the minority. They cannot do that. Republicans are in the majority in both chambers in the legislative branch. They could theoretically do something. As a former Republican, what do you think is going through their heads?
Oh, I think they're sweating bullets. I think they're very, very worried. I think they've been worried for quite some time. I remember reading a few weeks ago something in Axios where Ted Cruz was telling Donald Trump that he was concerned that Trump was leading them over the edge and over the cliff in the fall elections, and that they'd be slaughtered in the fall elections. And Trump's response was F you. And so I think they're scared. I think they realize Trump has no plan in Iran. He has no plan for anything. It's just all about him making things up as he goes along. And, you know, all the TSA debacles at BWI and other airports, that's not good. The Republicans own that. And so I think that they have to be very, very scared. I think that's why the Senate passed the bill to fund TSA, and why the Senate voted for that housing bill in the last week or two. They realize that they have to get their act together and make like they're doing something for the people. But Donald Trump won't let them.
Why they're not sufficiently scared to actually stand up to Trump?
Well, at some point they might be, and you can start to see the cracks. I mean, you know, we saw that little clip from CPAC where people were applauding.
We have that. We've got it.
And that's something you said, and Andrea, you were there too today, just how much fun people were having at these protests. And certainly we see Jacob Soboroff, and he could be
at a
music festival. He's having so much fun. But let's play CPAC, a snippet from that, and I want to talk about what it means.
How many of you would like to see impeachment hearings? No. That was the wrong answer. Let me try it again. How many of you would like to see impeachment hearings? No. Can someone bring some coffee out?
Yeah, I think they have a problem.
Can I just say, I think, though, that's like an indictment either for the MAGA base or for the administration. Either way you cut it, because if they didn't understand the question as to who the impeachment hearings were for, that's an indictment of the people who attend CPAC. But if it's because they did understand the question and they do want to see impeachment hearings for Donald Trump, then they seriously have a problem in their hand. So I don't think that Matt Schlapp or the organizers of CPAC come out in either way in that situation.
It's difficult to figure out what is the conundrum.
If you watched it, though, I will say it's the first one. Because the people there, that's his base. That's his base. Yeah. Trump and his sons, they didn't even show up to CPAC this year.
Yeah.
Well, and so to that point, if they are not having as much fun as the protesters around the country seem to be having more fun, even amid all of the horror and chaos that's happening. So how do Democrats channel that energy and turn it into success in the midterms?
Well, that's a challenge, because Democrats have to be also like welcoming many more people into their tent. There's a big debate about that right now. And I have a question on how they're going to do that. I mean, I am very impressed and proud by Democrats keeping funding away from ICE and CBP. They blocked funding. But I don't think Republicans are that nervous, considering that Mike Johnson did not fund TSA and he couldn't get Republicans to reopen DHS and improve airport lines, all because they're still banking on the mass deportation agenda being more popular than any other issue, which is just absolutely absurd at this point, right? Everything they're doing, they keep reaching for immigration, too. They're complicit. I don't see them being as nervous as they should be, or else the TSA lines would be normal right now, right? Like DHS would be open again. They would cut a deal. But instead, they want another $2 billion for ICE and CBP. And so I don't see that changing. But Democrats also have to offer more.
You think that they're on board? I think that they're nervous about how unpopular the immigration agenda is, but they're afraid of standing up to Donald Trump. I don't. Well, you perceive it differently. You think that they're like.
I perceive it differently right now, because I mean, he's full steam ahead. He's going to the Supreme Court to end birthright citizenship, to try to on Wednesday, right? He is full steam ahead on trying to take status away from over 300,000 Haitians and Syrians and other, legal immigrants. And so he's not stopping that, and they're not preventing that. And that's going to be very disruptive.
Yeah.